tonight. Sorry we're a little bit late getting started. We had a long work session. I've asked Commissioner Clayson to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Will the audience please rise? Repeat the pledge after me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first order of business tonight is the minutes. To confirm the minutes, do I have anybody that's looked through it? Give me a motion on them.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes can be entered in. Our first order of business is Larson Agricultural Protection Area. This is, I guess we have staff to present on this. This is not a public hearing, it says.
We'll wait till we get the slideshow up and running.
I feel like we're moving backwards.
Occasionally, this computer does not cooperate. We apologize.
Is there a way to use a different input? We just sidestep it. I assume Ian or Brandon, you guys have. We have a lab. Computers, Dave.
Can't live with it, can't live without it.
I was hoping David Mann was going to start describing agricultural fields and put us all in a mindset.
That's beautiful. Jackie, is this your land, your family land?
You've ridden that trail tons. You know where that's at.
Oh, is that right by the? Oh, yes. I recognize. Just it's a different time of year. That's one of my favorite stretches.
Yeah.
I'm thinking whichever Torres is better.
What are you looking for? I got Snickers.
All right. So the first item is the proposal for an agriculture protection area. It's in the southwest quadrant of the city. The proposal covers 5 parcels. That's around 41 acres. The property on the east side is in the residential or rural residential zone, and then the property to the west is in the R130 zone, all under the medium density residential general plan designation. So these are the 5 parcels you can see here, 4 of which were part of the Bodie Smith subdivision. The smaller parcel is where a new house was built, and so that was the purpose of the rezone and the subdivision. There was other property that was part of right-of-way acquisition for the existing roads there. Sorry, so there's the house. There's a little sliver of property there and there that's owned by the city. This is a rough timeline of the process of reviewing and approving an agriculture protection area. We're currently at this stage here. It's already been reviewed and recommended approval by the advisory board with the county. And part of the review is looking at these criteria that are in our code that look at different aspects of this property and whether or not it would be considered for an agriculture protection area. So being basically that, is it being used for production of agriculture, zoned for agricultural use? Is it viable? Are there any improvements or trends? And also mentions any future developments as far as roadways, parks, easements, those types of things. We ran the analysis. It's in the attached memo that's part of the staff report, but the staff is recommending 3 separate legal descriptions in this area that would not show the road as it exists today, as well as any future width that would be necessary with road improvements here as it develops, as well as a potential utility easement that could come in the near future. So that's the proposal that staff is recommending. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
In the exhibits you had for us, Exhibit 4 is notes from the County Agricultural Advisory Board meeting. Have those been, have those all been answered? One touched on this subject of whether or not the roads were in it and bisected the proposed area. What are they
So
referring
that's
to
talking
bisecting?
about this road right
Yeah,
here.
All right.
So that was discussed at the advisory board hearing, whether or not that should be included in the agricultural protection area.
Mm-hmm.
And they felt that it wouldn't be any issue to include it as it was being proposed by the applicant.
To include the road in it.
Right.
Okay.
So it's 3 different parcels because they're owned by 3 different I mean, they're all part of the same family, but owned by 3 different.
Right, so these would be 3 legal descriptions for the ag protection area that wouldn't include existing roads and right-of-way that's owned by the city.
It would, if it goes into this agricultural protection area, how does that affect the city council's ability to general plan that area? You just legally have to have that be in a general plan designated as agricultural protection area?
It wouldn't be part of the general plan land use designation. It would just be a separate legal description that would protect the owner to use the area for agricultural purposes. Also, this property here and the larger piece here also are under Greenbelt. So it's definitely been used and is currently being used for agricultural purposes, but it doesn't apply or affect any designations as far as land use.
And why would you, so those are owned by families, they have every right to use them as they are right now. Why have the agricultural protection area, why do this designation? What kind of protections does it afford?
Basically, part of it is legal protections. If there are any nuisance complaints, as development comes and neighbors might complain about smells or noises, things like that, it protects them, saying this is designated for agricultural use, and so it eliminates some issues as far as legal repercussions.
And as part of this designation, what is expected of neighboring properties? Are there legal expectations for neighboring properties
No,
when they're building or?
It wouldn't necessarily
impact?
impact them.
There are expectations. You mind if I? And I'm going to take a step back. This is the first bona fide request that we've had to create an agriculture protection area in Spanish Fork. There are several that exist right outside of Spanish Fork in the county, so we've been familiar with how they work and what they exist for and that type of a thing for quite some time. But it was just a few years ago when we created the opportunity to have new ag protection areas established within the city limits. And as Mr. Mann pointed out, I think we would say probably the biggest benefit that can come to people that have a legitimate agricultural operation is some type of protection from a nuisance lawsuit and that type of a thing.
Okay.
Additionally, for example, properties that undergo some type of land use change, particularly when they're subdivided for residential uses, there's notice that has to be provided. I believe that's typically done on the plat, maybe via signs that are placed in the area and that sort of a thing that oftentimes will say something like, this is an area that has been designated as an agriculture protection area. Be aware that there are things like sights and sounds and smells associated with farming operations, different things like that are done and that are required to be done to put neighbors on notice that the farm is here and that the farm has some right to continue to do what they've been doing. There also is a measure of protection that's provided from the use of eminent domain, which occasionally is a challenge for local jurisdictions when things are needed, like easements for utilities or right-of-way for road expansions and that sort of a thing, which is why staff supports the description that we see here on this image, where the space that would be needed should in the future a roadway expansion project proceed before properties like this undergo some type of land use change, that appropriate steps can be taken to acquire the needed space for that. Josh or Vaughn, what am I missing there, just by way of kind of high level?
Those are the main points, I think. There's also protection against zone changes against their will. But that's basically it.
Yeah, and there's yeah, I think we've talked about this a little bit as we're going through a general plan update. There is a requirement for the Planning Commission when a general plan is being developed or updated to consider the presence of agricultural protection areas and to consider how future land use changes might impact operations in those areas and that sort of a thing. So there are a handful of things that are certainly real, and as best as I can recall from a few years ago, our council was very supportive of the idea of allowing people to create areas like this within the city. I think it syncs well with the city's history and what we've talked with both the Planning Commission and the City Council about, which is doing what we can to help people be able to continue to farm for as long as they would like. What we're seeing here within this area, just to mention a couple of things that we discussed in the DRC meeting earlier today, and that we as staff have talked about in recent weeks. A portion of the property is zoned rural residential. That's the part that's on the east side of, I believe it's 1200 West. And that clearly is an agricultural zone. The property on the west side of 1200 West is zoned R130, which frankly is really not intended to be an agricultural zone. However, we allow people to farm in that particular zoning district, and we do allow for the keeping of large animals and that sort of thing. There's a limit on the number of cattle and sheep and different things like that that people can keep based on the amount of acreage in that particular zoning district, but it's a little bit different than what we would typically expect to see, the zoning of property in an ag protection area B. And there is a relatively small parcel, I believe it's on the order of a half acre or so, that a home was constructed on here just within the last 10 years, that currently does not receive the benefits of greenbelt status, which is a taxing status, which is indicative of whether or not a property is being used primarily for an agricultural use or not. I think both by way of the zoning and just the use of that property currently, those things probably don't sync up ideally with the intent of an agriculture protection area or some of the criteria that we have in our ordinance for the creation of an agriculture protection area. But yet, and I'll really look to our legal folks to correct me here if I'm out of line, but we as staff are comfortable with the proposal moving forward with those included in the area, should that be of some benefit to the property owners, even though it's not, as we see it, a perfect fit with probably the intent or some of the technicalities of the code.
So Dave, just so, this is the first one, I think I'd like to just make sure we discuss things and get it right. With that being R130, it still, though, has been used for agriculture. So
Sure,
it still
yeah.
qualifies for that criteria, because that's what it has been used historically.
Yeah, even down to the majority of that property currently being in greenbelt status, which means the county assessor's office is reviewing it and making sure that it's being used for genuine agricultural purposes.
Long term, if a future owner wanted to not be an agricultural protection area, what's the process?
They request to be removed, and then the code says the city must approve the removal.
Must approve if they want to change it.
No fee for the request either.
That's a good question that brought to my mind. So I think the minimum was it 40 acres or 20 acres?
20.
20. So what if the larger section 10 years from now drops out of it without any impact on?
No, anything that remains is still ag
Okay,
protected.
okay.
Back on your earlier question about the zoning, our evaluation criteria do indicate that's one of the criterion to consider, but it also is clear that no single criterion is necessary or sufficient for creating the ag protection area. So even if it's zoned R120 or R130, excuse me, then that's just one factor to consider. It's not dispositive by itself.
Okay.
I have two questions. One is, is agritainment allowed in this zone if you're an ag protection zone?
We, short answer is yes.
Okay.
Being in an agricultural protection area, that's really a distinct thing from local land use regulations. So you can still do whatever's permitted in the zoning that whatever city you're in or county has assigned to that property. And in our case, agritainment, we expressly allow that, I think, in the rural residential and the AE zoning districts. I think those are the only two that we allow that use in. But so it'd be measured by, does the zoning permit it more so than whether or not there's something with an agriculture protection area that might conflict with that use.
Okay, and then I just need to be clear on a couple of this. I'm reading from the minutes from the DRC from today. Is that today? So it's the last big paragraph here. So it says that about the Bodie Smith property, whether this should be included, and stated they spoke with city manager and decided that his property does not meet the criteria as it does not have greenbelt status, does not contribute to the proposal, so this property should not be included. Is this green right here?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask one of our folks to help identify that just on the map. It's
Oh.
that.
Right.
Oh, is this one or is this two? You're talking about this whole property right here? Oh,
Yeah.
this is two.
Clarify those
It's this lot right here.
parcels.
It's just that little corner.
Oh, just the little corner?
Yeah.
Oh, and are we seeing that it's drawn around, or it's fine that it's just included too?
You're saying that because the DRC made comment that it shouldn't be.
Correct. So I'm just wondering, anyway, I'm just asking for clarification on this.
Yeah, I think we have some image here, don't we, that describes that. Now, can somebody identify what we're talking
Oh,
about?
perfect. Thank you.
So what you're reading in the minutes, Commissioner Warnick, is information that Seth passed on to be shared, but the actual motion by the DRC did not exclude that parcel.
Okay. That was just part of the discussion. And now seeing the map with the drawn lines, that makes sense to me too. Okay, and on this map, I'm only seeing two big, the little skinny one is included in this right here.
Yes.
What's the differentiation with the color map that we were just looking at?
So the color map that was up is just showing 3 legal descriptions that aren't necessarily aligned with any specific property lines. Those are just legal descriptions showing basically an overlay of the ag protection that that staff feels would fit with the proposal.
Okay.
But the green one there, wasn't that an
So
easement?
the green one here is part of this parcel. It's just excluding this little corridor right here.
Oh, that's
part
an
of plans for a
easement.
future utility at some point.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Does it being agricultural protection zone restrict the city from running that through there? Would just now is the proper time to set an easement there?
I think with the proposal being considered, it's just something where staff feels that we want to look at future plans and developments and see what are some things that we'd want to maybe avoid in the future as far as development. So if that's something where it would be developed and the utility corridor would be necessary, we wouldn't. We prefer not to have that in that designation of a agricultural protection area.
Sure. Okay. And the same with the road. The road is, on the other map, is actually shown as Spanish Fork property. There's no issue with it being included if that needs to be widened through there because of future growth.
Right, and the requirements in the code for ag protection even says that as far as being continuous or contiguous to be considered, it doesn't necessarily account for roads or easements. So even though they're three separate legal descriptions that look like they're just three pieces, it would be considered a contiguous area based on that definition.
Okay, so this is allowing for future easement city utilities. That's why it's.
Yeah, I believe there is even an image in the staff report that just simply shows the city's, for example, transportation master plan. I think there may be another one that references the city's, one of the city's utility master plans. That's what we're talking about here. It's corridors that are identified on those existing documents. And I think that probably would be, our standard mode of operations when somebody proposes to create an agriculture protection area. The biggest part of the analysis, in fact, I think for the city would involve just making sure that the proposal aligns with the city's long-term needs. And otherwise, I don't know why the city would have a concern with creating an agriculture protection area, wherever anybody would want to do that. People, with our zoning code being the way that it is, can do a lot of agricultural things in a lot of different zoning districts, so probably wouldn't be a big land use issue. It's part of the reason we don't have any concern with this.
Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, Dave, need a little bit of coaching on what the proper course of action here. I don't see, are we to hear from the applicant? Are we looking for a proposal? The way this is stated, it doesn't really make that
Yeah, because of the timing of your meeting tonight and the timing of the date when the application was made and some other steps, essentially the recommendation from the Planning Commission has already been made. It's deemed to have received a recommendation for approval from the Planning Commission.
Oh, good for us.
Yeah,
We're good.
well done, maybe. So I don't believe it would be appropriate or that we're asking for you to take any action tonight, no motion or anything like that. Certainly, and I think this is why it's on your agenda, we think it's very appropriate, even if it's just as an exercise in kind of getting more familiar with areas like this, for you to offer any thoughts or comments that you have on any aspect of the area. Certainly the city council would be privy to that as they contemplate what action they would take. So,
Mr. Chair, I wonder, could we ask if the applicant has anything additional they'd like to add, to give us?
It looks like they
She
do.
likes to talk to us.
You know the routine. Please state your name.
My name is Jackie Larson. I am the applicant for this. So a couple things I would like to point out is that state code actually does allow that an ag protected area may include within its boundaries land used for a roadway, dwelling site, park, or other non-agricultural use, if that land constitutes a minority of the total acreage within the relevant protection area. So I, maybe 2 years ago, applied with the county for the Leland Ag Protection Area, and it is the area south of the yellow, so below the yellow, and then to the left of the purple. So everything there jumps over I-15 and connects up to the river. So I-15 in that small section is also included in ag protection. The roads are all included in it. I'm wanting to put this right up next to it. Another issue with that green part down at the bottom where it's wanting to cut that out, that would cut us off from our wells and our water rights through there, so I really wouldn't be in favor of that. But
So this family or the family owns land
Yep.
further south.
no, so we own that part right there. Those three colors is my father-in-law owns.
But you said it was cutting you off from your wells, so your wells
The
are in
wells
that
are
area?
in the green,
Okay, they're in the area that's green.
yes.
Okay.
So you can still allow, like, you can widen roads, you can put roads through ag protection. All that really does is say, like, there needs to be kind of an extra step to make sure that ag can continue and it's not gonna, like, impact us negatively. So we have our irrigation ditches that are like the head of this, that actually is cutting off our entire irrigation ditch, and the gates to that. So really, if it does come down to having utilities with it, quite frankly, we're in conversations with Dean Ingram to bring utilities possibly through here. So we're not saying no, not ever. We're just asking, we want to be able to continue farming, and have that be us being part of the conversation, making sure that the agricultural aspect of it is taken into play more. Does that answer like all the questions? Oh, other thing was Bodie's house. So Bodie's my brother-in-law. A lot of his property, it's actually the access into the, really a lot of where our equipment is, where our haystacks are. My husband has both his machines stored there, so it does have an ag impact. It wouldn't be able to meet Greenbelt because it's not 5 acres, but it is part of the ag operation as well. Do you have any other questions I can help with? Because I've done one of these through the county before, so.
Anything else we're missing?
I don't think so. I would just ask that it was approved as it was applied. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Who could answer? I have a question on the easement. Jackie's point about being restricted to cutting off access to a ditch or to wells. How would an easement running for future utilities, I think you said, how would that impact that, and how could that issue be mitigated?
There would be no impact. We're not suggesting that an easement be provided with the creation of it potentially as is described on that image. It would simply keep the opportunity available for the city to use eminent domain if at some point in the future there was a decision made to acquire the property via that route, if it became important. Would you add anything to that? I mean,
That's exactly right. It wouldn't make any change to the ground as it is today, or it would only preserve the right to acquire it in the future via those means. Obviously, we'd try to acquire it by negotiation and purchase.
Okay. Anything else? Great, thank you. I guess we just consider that closed, and our comments, everybody's comments will go on to city council, and that hearing, or that meeting will happen, and then they'll pass it on. We'll get to see how this works. I mean, my comments further on that is, this is kind of what I had envisioned when we talked about that a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. This is what we had in mind when we were talking about it. I mean, if that goes, our thoughts when we first entertained that in that language for the land use rights, this is what I thought would be happening. So I'm very glad to see that somebody's taking advantage of it. And just like Dave was saying, I think it helps preserve our history and the culture that we like here in Spanish Fork. So I'm glad to see that the Larson family's taking advantage of it. Hopefully it's something others will do also. Anything else? Okay. I'm not used to moving on without a vote, but we'll move on. The next item of business is a conditional use permit for an indoor batting cage facility. This is a public hearing, so we'll hear from staff and then the applicant and the public.
Every time I touch it, the blue screen comes up. Is that my cue to sit down? I think it'd be appropriate to see who can come up with the best baseball pun during this presentation. But that's just me. This is a recently developed industrial park. The applicant's looking to utilize a couple of the spaces within the left building, the west building on the property. The use would fall under indoor commercial recreation facility. What they're looking to do is, as stated, is an indoor batting cage facility. With the staff report, we've provided a memo that kind of outlines their request and what they're providing on the site as far as parking. Staff looked at this with the DRC based on their hours, primarily from 4 to 10 p.m., and the additional parking that they can't provide above and beyond the minimum that the code requires. Staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit with the findings and conditions that are outlined in the staff report. Any questions for staff? Thank you.
Does the applicant want to come up and say anything about this?
There's nothing
State
too
your name,
fancy.
please.
Trevor Randolph.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the partners on the batting cages. Nothing too fancy about our proposal. Not looking for anything regarding rezoning or anything like that. Originally, when we applied for the business license, we assumed that it would fall under instructional studio, which is permitted in I-1, which classifies gymnastics, yoga studios, CrossFit gyms, different things like that. After going through the process, the DRC deemed that it would fall more under indoor recreation, which is why we needed to apply for the conditional use permit. We've gone through all the proper steps. I think up to this point it's been approved by every committee outside of the Planning Commission. One of the proposed conditions was parking. I think one of the big fears of parking is what we see happening over at the ADC over by Barney's Dugout. And so the original code, municipal code, states 1 stall per batting cage, which would only put us at a max of 4. We've increased that to 3 stalls per batting cage. So we have parking stalls that would accommodate 12 vehicles thus far. And if we needed more, according to the CCNRs for the entire complex there, it's all shared parking, so we could go far and be above 12 if needed. I know that notifications have already been sent out to all of the tenants surrounding the batting cages. Most of them are either our landlords or business partners, so that was pretty easy as far as that goes. But if you guys have any other questions, happy to answer those too.
I guess my question is partly for staff, which is looking to see if there's just a good flow for parents to come and pick up kids if they had. I mean, do you know? Like
Yeah, I mean,
if you were
there's
talking about
We have
like
a site plan that
a
shows.
site plan, right?
We did
I
have
mean-
a slide that shows that there's 2 accesses to the property, so if the applicant wanted to create a pick-up and drop-off pattern, we definitely encourage him to do that.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
most of the businesses, I know that will change, but most of these businesses are probably going to be 9 to 5 in this
Yeah,
area.
correct.
And you guys will
Correct.
be after school to 9 or 10.
Yeah, our opening hours are 4 p.m. and closing at 10 p.m. So,
So it'd be kind of counterflow with the rest of the businesses that are
correct.
operating in the area.
correct.
That makes sense.
Yep. Parking, the entire parking lot is fairly wide, so even if we did just use the one side of it, there's still adequate space for, pick up and drop off. But like you said, we do have 2 access points on both sides of the building that can be accessed if needed. So, yeah.
The only time would be an issue is like this, when one team's coming, one's leaving.
Right.
And that would be after the 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank
Anything
you.
else? Okay. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I have a question for staff. When do we ever put 1 parking stall per batting cage?
That's a great question. I think
You wanna throw the
it's
ball
been
to
in play
yourself?
for a long time is the best answer I can give.
It's a lonely game.
Might go back to before most people had cars even. So,
Okay, so this is a public hearing. I'd like to open up to the public. If anybody is here to comment on this, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Is there any other comments from commissioners? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move that the proposed conditional use permit be approved based on the findings and subject to conditions.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. The next item of business is an annexation, 920 West annexation.
Awesome. Good evening. Okay, so this is the 920 West annexation. It's located at approximately 920 West and 200 North, and it contains roughly 6.5 acres. This annexation proposal consists of 2 parcels that, when combined, kind of make this triangular shape. But each parcel is kind of like a trapezoid shape, essentially. As this property is not currently within Spanish Fork, obviously, it has no zoning. However, it was included in the general plan, and it has a designation of primarily medium density, so that's up to 8 units per acre. However, there's in that bottom kind of southwest corner, there is, I think, a little bit of the mixed use designation touching that as well, but it's primarily medium density. At the time of annexation, the applicant is requesting rural residential zoning, so that will be its designation. This annexation proposal lies within both the growth boundary for the city, as well as the 2018 annexation policy plan. So it's within both of those. At the moment, there's no site plan associated with the annexation. However, I believe the applicant is working on something. We have no timeline for it, though. But yes, at the moment, staff has seen no site plan for it. Since it will be designated as rural residential, when it comes to the approval process for any future development, it'll have to come back through City Council and get rezoned. So on November 5th, 2024 was when the City Council accepted this proposal for further study. The protest period for the annexation ended on January 4th, and we received no protests regarding it. The feasibility study was recently completed by staff, and it had no major issues. I think the only issue that engineering brought up was sewer, because the sewer is pretty shallow over there, right? So there need to be some fill when development takes place. And then on January 15th, the DRC recommended the annexation be approved with the rural residential zoning. The vote was nearly unanimous. However, there was one voting member who was against recommending approval due to access to the annexation area and some challenges providing utility services there. So that's kind of the timeline up until now.
So the concern about access into the area, I mean, what we're concerned, I'm sure there's going to be development on it in the future, but
Yeah.
right now it's an RR zoning.
It has, yeah, that's what it would be when it's annexed in, correct?
So that's what they're asking for.
Yes.
So those concerns would be dealt with. The access and utility would be dealt with when they came with a development package for us to look at later on.
Correct.
With a request to change zoning, if in fact they do want to change zoning.
Correct.
But right now, it's been used for agriculture for as long as I remember, and there's not been any access concerns, has there? That road splits to like half a road down on that end, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't.
The other,
So the access concern is just the number of units that would be allowed on a dead end until the road can connect to the northeast. And so
but isn't that
was
looking ahead to future
that was
problems?
The concern with the access was just figuring out long-term solutions.
Right.
Otherwise, they'll have to phase their plans if they exceed the maximum number of units that we allow off of a
So for
single street.
RR, it's great the way it is now.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's when they come with a 6-story multifamily building there that we're gonna have a little bit of a problem. Okay, any questions for staff?
Nope.
Do we want to hear from the applicant?
As Ian said, we're working on a site plan.
Please state your name.
Sorry, Tate Murphy with Elevate Development. As Ian said, we're working on a plan right now, but that'll all take place at a later date when we go through the rezone for this. So, as it stands right now, I think it's, Ian did a good job of summarizing it. It's within the growth boundary. It's, on the right side of I-15 and kind of, right next to a lot of development that's happened a while back and then more recently as well. So.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Okay, any further questions or concerns we want to talk through?
I guess that this is already alluded to here, but I think by approving that they'll come into, that they'll be annexed, isn't necessarily saying that we would approve proposals. Like there really are real issues with accessibility and utilities.
I think the DRC made that pretty clear with their comment, and I think that would be the developer's probably very aware of that. I would assume they're buying this at risk, that it's going to be zoned or annexed. They may not have bought it there. Do you own the property now? Partners. The property. So those plans would be at risk of whatever zoning they were able to get out of the city or get approved.
Great.
Is that being stated right? I mean, right now, it's only able to be used as agricultural right now.
Yeah, that's the proposal. That's what staff supports.
Yep.
So the commission action tonight, if you're inclined, would be to recommend approval of the annexation with rural residential zoning.
Do I have a motion?
I recommend that the proposed annexation be recommended for approval to the City Council based on staff's findings and conditions.
A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So the motion passes. That will now go in front of the City Council. Are we really adjourning?
Adjourning to a work session. We hope.
So I need a motion to adjourn, then we're going to close into our work session.
I will make that motion. Let's adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Could we make the motion to skip the next meeting?
Yeah.